Hello friends, in this video I will be discussing on the long-term investment decisions which is very important for any business organization. So the topics that are going to be covered under this module are like this: need and importance of capital budgeting and the process of capital budgeting, techniques of capital budgeting, payback period, time adjusted payback period, accounting rate of return, net present value, internal rate of return, modified internal rate of return, profitability index, capital rationing, estimation of cash flows for new projects and replacement projects. So, friends, what is capital budgeting? As we have discussed in previous modules, financial management not only focuses on the procurement of funds but also on their specific use with the objective of maximizing the owner's wealth. The allocation of funds is therefore an important function of financial management. This allocation of funds involves the commitment of funds to assets and activities. Hence, it is also referred to as the investment decision. That is, making a choice regarding the assets in which funds will be invested. And these assets fall into two broad categories, that is, short term or current assets and long term or fixed assets. Accordingly, there are two types of investment decisions: short term investment decision and long term investment decision. Short term investment decision, it is also known as management of current assets or working capital management. And the long term investment decision, and this is also known as capital budgeting or capital expenditure decision. The various dimensions of working capital management are discussed in detail in another chapter, that is working capital management. Here in this module I will be discussing about long-term investment decisions. So friends, what is capital budgeting? Capital budgeting, it is the process of evaluating and selecting long-term investments that are consistent with the goals of shareholders' wealth maximization. Take for example a manufacturer who is considering investment in a new plant, a bank which is thinking of computerization of its system, a pharmaceutical firm which is evaluating a major R&D program. All these situations involve a capital expenditure decision, and each of these represent a scheme for investing resources which can be analyzed and appraised reasonably and independently. The basic characteristic of a capital expenditure, which is also called as capital investment or a capital project or simply a project, is that it typically involves a current outlay of cash or funds in the expectation of a stream of benefits extending far into future. So capital expenditure, it is the system of control, capital budgeting, which is employed for evaluating expenditure decisions. As I told you, capital budgeting decisions pertain to a longer term time period. That is, today you are going to make an investment, but the returns or the cash inflows or the benefits are expected in a future point in time, that too over a period of time. The benefits are spread over a long time period. Capital expenditure management includes addition, disposition, modification, and replacement of fixed assets. So, the features of capital budgeting would be initial outlay and the anticipation of returns over a period of time, a relatively high degree of risk, and a relatively long time period between the initial outlay and the anticipated returns. So, a capital in a capital budgeting, the benefits from a project are anticipated and spread over a long term period. So now we will discuss about the importance of capital budgeting. Capital budgeting decisions are of significance because in financial decision making, the first place affect the profitability of a firm. So capital budgeting decisions pertain to fixed long-term assets, which by definition refer to assets which are in operation and yield a return over a period of time, usually exceeding 1 year. They therefore involve a current outlay or series of outlays of cash resources in return for an anticipated flow of future benefits. In other words, the system of capital budgeting is employed to evaluate expenditure decisions which involve current outlays but are likely to produce benefits over a period of time which is longer than 1 year. Therefore, benefits may be either in the form of increased revenues or reduced costs. And these benefits may be in the form of increased revenues or reduced costs. Hence, capital expenditure management include addition, disposition, modification and replacement of fixed assets. Therefore, we can say that the features of capital budgeting is potential large anticipated benefits, a relatively high degree of risk and return, and a relatively long time period between the initial outlay and the anticipated returns. Why capital budgeting is important? Capital budgeting decisions are of paramount importance in financial decision making. Such decisions affect the profitability of a firm. They have a bearing on the competitive position of the enterprise, mainly because of the fact that they relate to fixed assets. as fixed assets represent the true earning assets of the firm. They enable the firm to generate finished goods that can be ultimately sold for profit. The current assets are not generally earning assets, rather they provide a buffer that allows the firms to make sales and extend credit. Current assets are also important to operations, but without fixed assets to generate finished products that can be converted into current assets, the firm would not be able to operate. Therefore, they are strategic investment decisions as against tactical, which involve a relatively small amount of funds, and hence such capital investment decisions may result in a major departure from what the company has been doing in the past. Acceptance of a strategic investment will involve a significant change in the company's expected profits and in the risks to which these profits are subject to. These changes are likely to lead stockholders and creditors to revise their evaluation of the company. Thus, capital budgeting decisions determine the future destiny of the company. An opportune investment decision can yield spectacular returns. On the other hand, an ill advised and incorrect decisions can endanger the very survival of the large firms. Wrong decisions and the firm may be forced into bankruptcy. And secondly, a capital expenditure decision has its effect over a long time span and inevitably affects the company's future cost structure. For example, if a particular plant has been purchased by a company to start a new product, the company commits itself by a sizable amount of fixed costs in terms of labor, supervisory salaries, insurance, rent of building, and so on. If the investment turns out to be unsuccessful in future or yields less profit than anticipated, the firm will have to bear the burden of fixed costs unless it write off the investment completely. That is, future costs, break-even point, sales and profits will all be determined by the selection of the assets. Thirdly, capital investment decisions once made are not reversible without much financial loss to the firm because there may be no market for second-hand plant and equipment, and their conversions to other uses may not be financially viable. And lastly, capital investment involves costs, and the majority of the firms have scarce capital resources. This underlines the need for thoughtful, wise, and correct investment decisions, as an incorrect decision would not only result in losses but also prevent the firm from earning profits from other investments which could not be undertaken for want of funds. As capital budgeting is very important for, for any company for its long term survival, capital expenditure faces the some of the difficulties. Capital expenditure decisions are of considerably significance as the future success and growth of the firm depends heavily on those decisions. The benefits from investments are received in some future period, and we know that future is uncertain and hence an element of risk is involved. Say, for example, a decision to acquire an asset that is going to last for 15 years requires a 15-year forecast. A failure to forecast correctly will lead to serious errors which can be corrected only at a considerable expense. Future revenue involves estimating the size of the market for a product and the expected share of the firm in that. These estimates depends on a variety of factors which includes price, advertising and promotion and sales effort and so on. Adding to the uncertainties are the possibilities of shifts in consumer preferences, the actions of competitors, technological developments, and changes in the economic or political environment. And also, costs incurred and benefits received from the capital budgeting decisions occur in different time periods and they are not logically comparable because of the time value of money. It is not often possible to calculate in strict quantitative terms all the benefits or the costs related to a particular investment decisions. So friends, though the capital budgeting decisions are very important and are of paramount importance, it suffers from lot of difficulties that I discussed here. Yes, the process of capital budgeting. Capital budgeting, it is a complex process and it is divided into the following phases: identification of potential investment opportunities, assembling of proposed investments, decision making, preparation of capital budget and appropriations, implementation, and performance review. Coming to the identification of potential investment opportunities, it begins with this step. The planning body develops estimates of future sales which serve as the basis for setting production targets. This information in turn is useful in identifying required investments in plant and equipment. For imaginative identification of investment ideas, it is helpful to monitor external environment regularly to scout investment opportunities, formulate a well-defined corporate strategy based on a thorough analysis of strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and share corporate strategy and perspectives with persons who are involved in the process of capital budgeting and motivate employees to make suggestions. So, after making the identification of potential investment opportunities, the next step is assembling of proposed investments. Investment proposals identified by the production department and other departments are usually submitted in a standardized capital investment proposal form. Generally, most of the proposals before they reach the capital budgeting committee or some body which assembles them are routed through several persons. The purpose of routing a proposal through several persons is to ensure that the proposal is viewed from different angles. It also helps in creating a climate for bringing about coordination of interrelated activities. Investment proposals are usually classified into various categories for facilitating decision making, budgeting, and control. For example, the classification would be like replacement investments, expansion investments, net new product investments, and obligatory and welfare investments. After assembling of investment proposals and classification of the investment proposals, the next step is decision making on the choice of the proposal. A system of rupee gateways usually characterizes capital investment decision making. Under this system, executives are vested with the power to OK investment proposals up to certain limits. For example, in one company, the plant superintendent can OK investment outlays up to rupees 2 lakh, the works manager up to rupees 5 lakh, and the managing director up to rupees 20 lakh investments 20 lakh. Investments requiring higher outlays need the approval of the board of directors. And the next step is preparation of capital budget and appropriations. Projects involving smaller outlays and which can be decided by executives at lower levels are often covered by a blanket of appropriation for expeditious action. Projects involving larger outlays are included in the capital budget after necessary approvals. Before undertaking such projects, an appropriation order is usually required. The purpose of this is to check mainly to ensure that the funds position of the firm is satisfactory at the time of implementation. It also provides an opportunity to review the project at the time of implementation. Translating an investment proposal into a concrete project, it is a complex, time consuming and risk taking task. Delays in implementation, which are common, can lead to substantial cost overruns. For expeditious implementation at a reasonable cost, we have to follow certain steps like adequate formulation of projects, use of the principle of responsibility accounting, and use of network techniques. So once the capital budgeting and the choice of the project is made, then the next is to review the performance of the choice that was made. Performance review or post completion audit is a feedback device. It is a means for comparing the actual performance with projected performance. It may be conducted most appropriately when the operations of the project have established. It is useful in several ways. It throws light on how realistic were the assumptions underlying the project. It provides a document log of experience that is highly valuable for decision making. It helps in uncovering judgmental biases and it induces a desired caution among project sponsors.